Well, y'all, we're going to start in on part 2 of the Mazda. Drain the trans fluid, start taking the front suspension apart, getting the axles out of it, pick up where we left off. It's been cold here in Colorado, so I haven't touched the Mazda in a couple weeks. So I'll start doing the mechanical teardown and show you guys as I go with what I'm doing. We're going to start by pulling the tires. I kind of cheated, they're already off because we did pick up some new tires for the Mazda. So I'll start by showing you guys that, and then we'll start taking apart the front suspension and go from there. Well, we got the transmission draining. We're going to start pulling the brake caliper and the strut assembly, tie rod, get the knuckle so it falls back, and we can pull the axle shaft out here, which is either a 30 or 32 millimeter nut. And then, like I said, it'll be 2 bolts on the strut, the knuckle comes out, and then we should be good to start pulling axles. And it's the same process on both sides. And the only reason I say pull the tie rod is so that way you can get enough movement out of the knuckle to get the axle shaft completely out of the way. Alright, so we got the strut assembly off. We've got the brake caliper hanging. Never leave it hanging by the hose, always hang it by the wire. A piece of wire, coat hanger, or something. You guys can tell we've got the drive axle out. I left the tie rod stuck in. It was stuck and I didn't want to break the tie rod. It's still in good shape. The other thing we have to deal with is the sway bar nut is rounded. So we're just going to put new end links, and I've got new struts going in this, and that's going to be another video. We got some old school Totico blues and some teen S springs, so we're going to bring it down about 1.5 inches. But at the same token, we're going to be addressing all the worn insulators and all that since I have it apart. So we're going to get to the passenger side. It's the same thing. When you guys come over here, you guys can see I've got it apart, but the axle is stuck. So I got to figure out what I'm doing and what's going on there. I think I'm going to have to disconnect. There's an intermediate shaft that's bolted to the engine, which has to come out anyways for the swap. So we're going to go ahead and get that unbolted, and we're going to work on getting the axle out of the knuckle on this side. So since the tie rods won't come off and I don't have a pickle for it, little MAP gaskets and heat. Get it nice and hot. And I got to replace these anyways, so the boot burning isn't something I'm worried about. You just want to make sure you don't catch the car on fire. In this case in point, a rag to be a good friend to put it out. But you want to be quick because you don't want it to cool off. And there you go, it's free. We'll let that cool down, we'll take the nut off. Then we're going to do the same to the other side and get ready to pull that other axle. You guys can see the tie rods are done on both sides. Here's the CV shaft. Now on the passenger side, my CV shaft was stuck in the knuckle. If you guys don't, I don't recommend using a sledge. I like using my brass or copper hammers. That way you don't damage anything except for the hammer itself because it's a soft metal. So once that's done, you can pull this CV shaft out, and there's a intermediate shaft that bolts to the side of the block under the car. You'll unbolt that and then pop it from the transmission. So I'll get underneath there and I'll show you guys that. So I apologize. Somewhere in this video it didn't record the sound. I'm showing you the 3 bolts that hold the intermediate shaft to the block and their location. You're going to remove these 3 bolts to separate the intermediate shaft off the block so you can then drop the CV shaft. Alright, so what I was able to do is probably gently on this with a flathead right in here and hold the outer half of this whole CV shaft assembly with my right hand, and then that'll free that up. Now there is a lip or a retaining ring on these that hold them into the axle, and I'm probably going to damage this, what's left of the seal, but that don't matter because we're not reusing this. You guys can see it's just bending it, but I'm trying to see if I can pull my free hand. Let's switch camera hands here, guys. And it's not going to move. I'm going to have to set the camera down, but the joys of trying to film and do it. See where it's separating from the trans. I might have to set this camera down though to do this. I don't know yet, guys. You guys are going for a ride here with me. Oh well, we'll have to pause this because let me get this out and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So here's the CV shaft coming out, and what I did was lift it up, wiggle, and pull, and then now it's free. That'll come out, and we'll take this out all the way out the passenger side. And you guys, it's tight, and I know my camera sucks, but the joys of filming and taking shit apart together. So this will come out like this, and then the axle will be out, and then we'll start working on getting the starter assembly out right here. We gotta undo the starter, start working on the flex plate bolts, and then we gotta get to the trans mounts and a few other things, and I'll show you guys that as we go through this. This bolt hole here is the top bolt for your starter. So you have a long bolt and a short bolt. The short bolt is on the bottom side of the starter you get from underneath the car, and the long bolt is on the top side. Alright, so we got the starter bolts out, and that's where we left off. I'm going to crawl underneath again. We're going to start working the torque converter bolts. You might have to put a socket on the crankshaft bolt to spin the motor over and get those torque converter bolts out. Get down there, and I think there's 4 torque converter bolts to undo. And sorry, all I'm tired. Once those 4 bolts are down, then there's a cross member to remove, and then the belt housing bolts, and we should be ready to drop the trans after that. I need to do some more reading and verify where we're at. But that'll be all part of this video. So let me get underneath there, show you guys where the torque converter bolts are, how you access those, and we'll start breaking those loose. You can see, put a breaker bar on the front of the engine to spin it over. It's a 21mm socket for the crankshaft bolt, or the harmonic balancer bolt. It just sits on there, so I try to keep it going to the right. And yeah, we got an oil leak off the oil pan. It's not coming up from any higher, so at least I don't think it is. If it is, it's going to be the front timing seal, or the front crankshaft seal. Sorry guys. So we get underneath here. Try to fish you guys back up in here. I know I got the most shaky camera angles, but you guys can see the nut that holds the torque converter to the flywheel, and there's 4 of those. What I did was I ran an extension back in here with a swivel, kind of like through here, right here, and I put my ratchet like right in here, and we'll break that free. I know I probably have the world's shakiest camera, you guys. So you guys can see the ratchet runs right here, the extension to 14. And I know I could take this bracket off, but that's one thing less I have to remove if I could get it out this way. We'll just probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit longer extension. And for those of you who really want to be crazy with the extensions, you can run this almost all the way out of the vehicle. So once we get it loose, let me get this out of my way here. It's really cramped towards y'all. You guys can see the nut right here. Get my light on. Oh, I can see. This is what's holding the torque converter to the flywheel. So we'll get this out of here. You guys can see the exposed studs now. So this is actually number 4 for me. Well, you guys can see I'm spinning this over with the 21mm on the crankshaft pulley that I showed you guys earlier, and I'm just spinning it until I see another stud. And now that that's all 4 studs are off, we will go with, I believe this cross member has to come out as well as this cross member. Then once we have to drop this cross member to access the nut for this one, because I don't know if I can get a socket in here to get to this nut. And the reason this has to come out is because on the front side here, and because of the way the trans is, you got a mount that is right here connected to it. So yeah, I don't know what that is. That's interesting. Anyways, I'm distracted here, y'all. Sorry. We'll get these 2 nuts off, undo this mount here, and then we'll drop this mount with the trans. And then in the back, there's these 3 bolts, 1, 2, and 3, to disconnect this from the transmission, and then this will drop, and we should be able to get the trans out, as well as a rear mount on the trans on the top side. This is that rear trans mount that I was telling you guys, driver's side trans mount, the rear of the transmission, that has to come undone. And I was going to do this video in 2 to 3 pieces, or 3 videos, but with how much time it's taking me to get to where I'm at and trying to record this, it's probably going to be almost 5 parts. And I know it's kind of drawing it out, but it makes life easier on me. Try to show you guys what I'm doing. You guys can see I've got the shift linkage disconnected, the trans cooler lines disconnected, and then you've got 19mm bolts for the bell housing here, and those are already broken loose. So once we get the cross members out of the way, then we'll work on disconnecting the bell housing bolts and the transmission mounts up top. And we'll have to support the engine, because the engine only has 1 mount left holding it in when you disconnect all the other mounts. Personally, I think it would have been better to support the engine, or make it self-reliant anyways. But we're going to end it here. Y'all, thanks for tuning in. Sorry this is so drawn out. God bless and have a good day.